75 years ago today, folks were worried Martian gas was coming to get them. That's because back in 1938, Orson Welles put on his infamous War of the Worlds radio play. People thought it was real. And in New York, hundreds ran into the streets holding handkerchiefs over their noses, hoping to avoid the end of the world. Wells, a Kenosha native, never got into trouble for that broadcast, but it'll never be forgotten.
In fact, you can relive the play tonight here in Madison and all over the world on the internet. Andrew Bottomley works at UW-Madison in communication arts, and he's part of a worldwide effort to revive the broadcast. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, I think you made such a good point when we were in the commercial break. This is a different era when the original airing happened. People were so dependent on the radio, and you had to use your imagination. There were no pictures.
Of course.
So let's talk about that first. Did it really cause as much panic as the legend says?
Right. Well, that's highly debatable, and there's been a lot of evidence that's come out historically and more recently, although over the past few decades, that indicates that indeed the panic was quite small. I mean, certainly there were a number of people who thought what they were hearing was true. How many of them actually ran into the streets or committed suicide? As you know, there were all these rumors and reports of people being admitted to hospitals for shock, running into churches and yelling, you know, it's the end of the world, you know, and whatnot. And that it's hard to say, you know, how many people really, you know, were panicking in the streets.
It did cause a stir, though.
But it caused a stir, and certainly its legacy in the media was this idea of causing a panic or a mass hysteria. And it's remembered today for a number of reasons, but that being perhaps the most notable one, as being sort of the evidence whenever we want to talk about panics being caused by the media, we point to War of the Worlds.
And he did have a disclaimer at the beginning and end, but people just didn't hear it. So why are we celebrating now 75 years later? Well,
these things, the anniversaries like these tend to pop up, right? 50, 75, and I'm sure we'll do something when it's 100 too. It's a play, and of course Orson Welles is a figure, and a number of the other people involved with the original play. John Houseman, the producer, also went on to be a famous actor and film producer. Howard Koch wrote the script. He went on to write films like Casablanca. So it's known for a number of reasons. Because of the sort of legacy it has with these famous figures, but it's I think worth remembering for this idea, particularly as we move into this internet era, and we have all these new ideas about the effects of the media and the sort of the panics that might happen through the internet and new media. I think it's worth looking back at, you know, this perhaps not the original panic, but the most memorable one.
Well, tell us about tonight's event in Madison.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to be having a listening party on campus at UW-Madison in 1280 Granger Hall is where we'll be. And there's a 3-hour broadcast. It's actually originating out of Binghamton, because this is part of a larger, Binghamton, New York. This is part of a larger national and potentially worldwide event that's happening online through the hashtag WOTW75. And I'm part of a group that's from scholars from around the United States that's producing a radio broadcast. It's a 3-hour broadcast, the centerpiece of which, the middle hour, will be a rebroadcast of the original 1938 radio play. And then there's a documentary, a radio documentary about the sort of history and legacy of the plays, the first hour. And then there'll be a panel discussion and some sort of recreations, music and drama by some students in the 3rd hour. And we'll be listening to that simultaneously online with potentially anyone in the audience.
Wow.
Right? Can follow on social media through that hashtag of WOTW75.
And Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and it should be an interesting evening all around.
Yeah, and at the event we'll have everything on screen, and you can follow along.
The old radio show meets the new media world.
Yeah, exactly.
Andrew, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to see you.
Great being
Well,
here.
coming up next, it's a place that harkens back to the good old days.
We'll visit this Monona mainstay that gives families a night out to bring them closer together.
And tonight on News 3 at